It's Matt.
Matt.
All right, I'll get started. Hopefully my internet connection is good, and I will say good evening, everybody. Welcome to Dark Star Magic. Welcome to my triumphant return. It's been a few months since I've done a Dark Star Magic class, which is my fault. I ran into some writer's block issues. Tonight I'm going to be teaching a class on planetary magic, which is, I feel like it's sort of a vague title. It's a really, really broad topic. But basically that just means that I've got a lot of slides and a lot of topics to cover. So I'm going to start with who I am. I've been doing occult stuff and weird magic stuff since the 80s. And ceremonial magic in particular, actually, I guess for about 26 years now, since it is now 2026, and I started in about 2000. And when I started off, I was really into like Kabbalah and a lot of modern magic stuff. And since then, I've really dove into a study of Renaissance magic, which includes, astrological magic and all of that kind of stuff. Spirit scrying, which I'm going to touch on a little bit in this talk, I've been doing for about 10 years. That might be about 11 years now. I haven't updated everything, sent all my slides since the year turned. I suppose I should probably get in the habit of doing that. But I run the Arneson website, which has a blog and a podcast, and you've probably seen me around on social media and various places like that. So planetary magic is something that's like really deeply ensconced in how Western civilization and the history of Western civilization has kind of like viewed itself and viewed the world that it lives in. So in order to really like understand it and get into it, we need to start with planetary cosmology. We're going to talk about like sort of the concept of spirits. We will talk about sigil creation. We're going to talk about petitions and amulets, which I put in the same category. And then talismans, which I put in a different category. Although maybe petitions and talismans should be in the same category. We'll figure that out as we go along. And then I am going to talk about electional astrology, but only a little bit. Electional astrology is a topic that is so complicated on its own that you should probably come to another Dark Star Magic class that's all about electional astrology and not about all this other stuff that I'm going to be talking about. But we will get into it a little bit. You can at least learn how to do the basics of it and find people who can do the rest of it for you. Okay, so planetary magic. Hold on, I have to change my. Okay, so planetary magic in the context of like the Western esoteric tradition is working with the energies of the traditional planets, and also like their different paradigms and their different spirits. It is like endemic across Western occultism. It occurs in ceremonial magic. It occurs in astrological magic. It occurs in Wicca and witchcraft and cunning lore and root work and tarot. Like if you speak English and you want to do magic, if you speak any European language and you want to do magic, planetary magic and the ideas in it are going to be kind of like embedded into the systems you're looking into. So getting sort of a basic understanding of how planetary magic works kind of gives you a language with which you can understand almost any system of magic in the East or even the Middle East. As you'll observe here, this particular image is in Arabic. And while it is sort of filled with ritual, it is a magical language or a magical system that encourages creativity and innovation and sort of a depth of richness and exploration of the imagination itself. Which leads to, especially since it's been adapted so many times and adopted by so many different traditions, it leads to the ability to sort of like create your own personal approach. And so mine, for instance, combines a lot of elements that are old sometimes ancient, like ancient Greek stuff. Some things that are sort of traditional that date back to the Renaissance, and some things that are new that, I mean, heck, some of them I just made up myself. But one of the things that I love about it is the way that planetary magic sort of like engages all of your senses in order to create magical space and increase your own influence. So these are some of the elements of astrological magic. We're going to go over, we're going to at least touch on all of these today. But we won't be able to get into a lot of detail on all of them just because I got like almost 50 slides to go through here. So electional astrology is the idea that there are particular places that all of like the stars and the planets are in that you can somehow capture using a magical act or an act of magical creation, like the creation of a talisman or a piece of artwork or a piece of ritual that you can like collect the energy of the stars and the planets at a particular time. Talisman design, we'll get into that a little bit. There are a lot of like really traditional ways to do it, but especially in like modern times, people have been getting crazy creative with it. So we'll touch on that. Image magic is integral to talisman design, working with spirits and almost every other part of astrological magic. Spirits are, I'm not going to talk about this a whole lot tonight, but spirits are a very traditional and normal way. I feel like normal should be in finger quotes, but if you go back like 300 years, it wasn't normal in finger quotes. It was just normal without quotes. It's sort of like the way that it was that the world was viewed to work, right? Like spirits made everything happen. It's not necessarily like the predominant view today. In fact, I think it's probably a very minority view, but working with spirits is definitely a part of planetary, and I called this slide astrological magic, but planetary magic. Talisman creation and consecration, we'll go over that. I'll give an example of how that works. And then magical materials, we will also, I believe, talk about that a little bit. It's possible that I made this slide and then I didn't go back after I edited my slide list down, but we'll see. If you see something that I missed, you can ask me questions about it later on, and I will tell you everything that I know. All right, so traditional Western planetary magic works with a geocentric sort of like view of the cosmos, and this falls apart completely if you are trying to do things based on sort of like how we know that the universe is laid out physically. So this cosmology is sort of seen as instead by like modern planetary magicians. This planetary cosmology is not really seen as like an illustration of how like actual matter works, as much as it is seen as a way that the imaginal or spiritual or astral landscape works, where you have Earth at the center, which you can see as your own kind of earthly existence. Moon comes after that, and it's sort of like the gateway to the upper realms. Then you have sort of like all the other planets kind of going up and beyond until beyond Saturn, you get the fixed stars. So this particular order that goes Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, the Moon, is known as the Chaldean order. And one of the interesting things about it is it outlines sort of what you could look at as sort of a finite and limited universe, where beyond Saturn and beyond the fixed stars is where you run into this sort of like infinity that is sort of viewed as sort of like divine. So it doesn't really work if you're looking at this as a map of the physical world, but it does work if you're looking at it as a map of sort of like the human soul or the experience that the soul can have. So the planets were ordered this way because of their relative velocity across the sky. A big part of working with planetary magic is just looking up, observing the night sky, being in places where you can go and you can like commune with nature and commune with the sky itself, and being able to like observe these things as they move. The moon moves faster across the sky than any other body. Mercury, I mean, they're all in order here. You know, Saturn crawls across the sky and returns to its place every like 27 to 30 years. Jupiter every 12 years. Mars every 2.5. The Sun every year, of course. Venus every, what is it, 9 months or something. And Mercury every couple of months. And then the moon every 28 days. So this system is sort of like central to viewing how the planets work, like even their personalities and the attributes associated with each of the planets are kind of tied to like how fast they were seen to move across the sky, or even how bright they appear to be. So these 7 classical planets do include the sun and the moon, and that's because the word planet comes from ancient Greek. And it's a word that means like the wandering star or a wanderer, where the starry sky was sort of seen as a fixed field, and across it, 7 things seem to move. They are split up into 3 categories, maybe 4 categories. So the first are the benefic planets, which are Venus and Jupiter. Then we have the malefic planets, Mars and Saturn, the lights, the sun and the moon, and then Mercury, which is something else. And they operate together kind of like a big family. If you're familiar with astrology and kind of like interpreting planetary stuff in astrology, it's very similar to how that works. So here I've sort of talked about it a little bit. If you're familiar with Greek mythology, this might help you sort of figure things out. Saturn is typically associated with Kronos, the father of Zeus, but also due to just people screwing up language over 2,000-3,000 years. Also with Chronos, who is the god of time. Jupiter is both Zeus and Jove, the Greek and Roman gods. Mars is Ares. The sun is Apollo and Helios and other solar gods. Venus is Aphrodite. Mercury is Hermes. And the moon is Diana, Selene, and Artemis. They're associated with days of the week. We don't see it as obviously in English, although all of the names of the English days of the week are derived from old Germanic names of the days of the week, which are derived from weird Roman associations between Germanic gods and Roman gods. So Saturday, obviously, is still Saturn. Thursday is related to Thor, who is associated with Zeus. Tuesday is related to Tyr, who is a Norse war god and associated with Ares. Sunday, obviously, with the sun. Friday with, I always get this mixed up. Is it Frigg? Is it Freya? It's Frigg, right? Maybe. Yeah. Anyhow. And Wednesday with Woden, who is associated with Hermes. And then Monday with the moon. But if you know any Romance language, it's way more obvious, because in Romance languages, the names of the days of the week are typically just pretty much the names of the days of the planets. And this is old. This association between the day and the planet it dates back to Babylon. It is a central part of basically like the identity of Western civilization. We'll get into that a little bit more in a bit. Okay, I'm going to try to get through this next part really fast because I think it's a lot of slides. All right, so planets are almost always associated not only with gods, but with different spirits. And depending on the culture and the time and stuff, sometimes these are looked at as demons. Sometimes they're looked at as helpful spirits. Frequently, there are archangels associated with planets. There are Olympic spirits from the Arbitel. There are intelligences from Agrippa, and all these are all sorts of other things. And throughout history, these somebody out there has an opinion. Throughout history, these spirits that are attached to the planets have been looked on by not just magicians, but by everyday people as influences that can teach us as individual practitioners, that respond to prayers, that can provide inspiration in the form of like art and music and other things like that, and even like influence and directly affect worldly affairs. In fact, for a long time, they were seen as the things that influenced and direct worldly affairs. And these spirits, over the millennia, have sort of like started to fall into categories where you have things like archangels and Olympic spirits and the spirits from the Heptameron, which is a grimoire, that are spirits that you can like directly contact and possibly even have conversations with. Whereas there are other spirits that are just kind of like used as magical names or magical sigils that are just used in magical work for talismans. Both planetary intelligences and these other planetary spirits are from Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's work, 3 books of occult philosophy. And as we go through this, I do want you to remember that like spirit work has fallen into such rarity that we aren't always certain how all of it worked in the past and how all of it is supposed to work now. And it can be a frustrating process. So don't expect it to be a universal success. Expect failures and struggles from time to time. All right, now I'm going to go through some lists, which is something that you have to get used to in planetary magic. So here we go. Here are the planetary archangels. These are outlined in a number of Renaissance books, and they go back way older than that. Sometimes you'll see, for instance, Mercury and the Sun get reversed, but you'll see these archangels listed in many, many, many different books of magic. They are great if you work in traditions that use archangels. And they can be used for all sorts of magical operations. Next, the Olympic spirits. These show up in the Arbitel and supposedly came from Paracelsus. I'm not totally convinced on that. I haven't actually come across the reference yet, but I'm sure it exists somewhere. The Arbitel presents these in a very straightforward way. If you want to learn more about them, read the Arbitel. It's not long. It's easy to follow along with. The planetary intelligences are a set of strange names that show up in Agrippa and not in very many other places. In fact, in no other places before that, but you do see them in other things. Hagiel in particular will show up in an example that I've got later. My favorite in this is Agrippa gets things like super, he makes something so complicated, like the spirit of the moon or the intelligence of the moon isn't the intelligence of the moon, it's the intelligence of the intelligence of the moon, and thus it has a name that is just ridiculously long. Will you ever use it? Doubtful. Here are some more planetary spirits from Agrippa. Agrippa sort of lists these as the evil spirits, but he doesn't really explain what that means. But they're there. You can use them. I think when he says evil spirits, he means that they are spirits that can be used for thaumaturgy, which was seen as evil for a period of time. And then, of course, we have a bunch of planetary gods. I've just listed ones from Greek and Rome here. You can find them in any Western civilization. You will find plenty of planetary gods. And a lot of these, depending on who they are and how they can be approached, sort of serve similar roles. It's not totally fair to say that, but you can sort of see them as serving similar roles as archangels in more Christian or Jewish traditions, but not totally. They are still going to be different. Oh man, I feel like I might have. Okay, we're going to get into the magic part now. So having all of these lists is great. You can find those lists in any number of books. In fact, I assume if you are here, you're into magic books, and you probably have a few of them. If you're looking to find books that are about planetary magic, things like the Heptameron, the Arbitel, Agrippa, lots of modern books about planetary magic. Those are like really great places to start. But they may not always do a very good job of like leading you in the way that will be most effective to you. What I will say is that like the primary thing that you need to do when you're working with planetary magic, or when you're trying to develop a practice based on planetary magic, is you need to think about how your world, your immediate world around you, is reflecting sort of like a greater world above. And so when I talk about like your planetary microcosm, it is sort of the idea that you are creating a space down here when you're doing ritual, when you're doing prayer, when you're creating talismans that that attract sort of like the energy or spirits of the planet you are working with. So because of this, one of the things that you're going to want to do is look into like the idea of planetary correspondences, and this means like all of these things that I've listed here. Color is a super big one. They are not as universal as you might think, depending on the tradition that you're choosing to work with or the religion that you already belong to. You probably have specific colors associated with the different planets. So you look those up. Incense is usually very particular. Sometimes it's not as particular as you think. And when in doubt, you can just pretty much burn frankincense for everything. So don't sweat the incense too much. Honestly, some books you'll come across and it'll be like every planet is frankincense except for one. So I think incense, it's just important that it's there. Clothing I found to be a really interesting addition to a planetary microcosm. I didn't come across the idea of different clothing for different planets until I read the Picatrix, in which it'll do things like, oh yes, you're doing work with Saturn. Dress like a grandpa, or dress like a funeral home worker. Oh look, you're doing work with Venus. Dress like a beautiful woman. Wear a veil over your face. Don't let anybody see you. Wear lots of perfume. So depending on, again, the book or the tradition you're working with, clothing can be hugely influential. Sometimes you don't need a whole lot. Like a lot of the Picatrix work that I've done with Venus, I just like wear a woman's scarf, and that's enough. Props can also be very important if you are working with, so for instance, like when I do Mars work, I have a specific magical tool that I use with Mars that is basically like a bat. It's just like a violent looking bat. You might have winged sandals if you're working with Mercury or something of that nature. Food and drink. This is something that I've experimented with quite a bit. Like you can find ideas for food and drink in various lists of correspondences. So you can find things like, stuff that's red, spicy, or stuff that's kind of, sultry or seductive, works with Venus, stuff like that. So you'd have food and drink that kind of goes along with your magical working, or you use as an offering in your magical working. Oysters and honey, strawberries and chocolate, stuff like that. All right, I'm still going to keep talking about sort of this planetary ritual stuff for a little bit before we get into some more specifics. It's hard to give specific ritual because it'll almost always be based on the specific working that you're going to want to do. But a lot of times, especially when you're working with grimoire magic or with older stuff, they will leave out a lot of stuff, or they'll say things like, do the usual. So you have to figure out like, what is the usual and what does that mean to you? So this is what I always use as kind of a basic frame ritual. When I'm making a ritual script, I include all of these. First, period of meditation to kind of like relax the mind and get yourself in the mood. Next, an opening prayer, otherwise known as an invocation. I have found, especially over time, as I've done magic for more and more years, I've become probably, I guess, a little bit more religious, and the inclusion of an invocation has become very essential to me. After the invocation, this might change depending on your religion, but I am a Hermeticist, and you cannot, or you're not supposed to like pray to the ultimate God while you burn incense, but you are supposed to burn incense while you're doing your banishing. So I always do the opening prayer, then I light the incense and do a banishing. The banishing ritual of the pentagram is a very common one. It works great. It's pretty long, and there are many shorter things out there that you can find. Next is the invocation for charging your magical operation. I put here a sigil, but it can be an amulet or a talisman or some operation. Not all acts of planetary magic involve the creation of an item. A lot of times they can be spirit work or scrying or things of that nature. Finally, when you're done with everything, you do a license to depart, because it doesn't matter if you are working with spirits or not. Planetary magic is going to attract planetary spirits. And then finally, the closing prayer, which is usually, you can keep it very short and easy. Finally, after you finish your ritual, have a snack and I don't know, go outside, touch grass to ground yourself. So plugging into this frame ritual, like if you don't have an existing set of rituals to work with, you will need some elements to put in there. The lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, is one of them. You can find that online in a zillion different forms, or you might have a tradition that you come from that already teaches it. But there are also lots of other things. You need planetary prayers. The Orphic hymns are classic. They've been used for millennia, and they are really, really good for this. You can find Thomas Taylor's translations online. You can find possibly some translations here in the store. You have any Orphic hymn translations?
I usually do. There's also the Poetic Liturgy.
They have
very interesting with Jake Stratton. Yeah.
Oh, Jake Stratton. Yeah. Okay, so there's that. That's a good one. The Picatrix has planetary prayers. The Heptameron has planetary prayers. The Greek magical.
But you didn't have
Who was that?
the elements.
Oh, did he? Yeah. I don't think he did a lot of planetary stuff. And then the Greek magical papyri has lots of invocations for various gods that can be used as planetary prayers. And then again, since you are trying to create a microcosm, look for props, special outfits, special incenses, special foods, everything you can do to create and craft your microcosm to work with the planet you're aiming at is what you want to do. Okay, now that we have that set up, I am kind of wondering if perhaps some of these things are a little out of order. So we'll go over this again at the end, and you guys can like ask me some more specific questions. The rules of the planets. You're working on a ritual. When you have a magical act that you want to do, when you want to create a talisman, when you want to pray to a planet, when you want to make a petition to the gods, how do you pick which planet to use? There are a couple ways to do this. You kind of look at, like, first of all, you start with their basic nature. Are you looking for something beneficial or something malicious? Are you looking to pray to the lights, which can kind of like be either, you know, the sun or the moon? Are you trying to find something that is personal? Because if it's personal and it's close to you, then you probably want one of the inner planets. Those are the planets that are closer. Expanse of influence, then you might want the outer planets, Jupiter or Saturn. But you also have to kind of like look at amongst the planet Jupiter, which influence your to touch things on a broader scale than you. Jupiter also like your success in talking to or you know the rulers of a and Jupiter is the impersonal outer. Venus is the close in personal benefic planet and is about nice things that are close to you, love and friendship and marriage, partnership. Yes, sorry, Saturn is the outermost planet, is the most impersonal. And the grumpiest Saturn is about the planets can be used in where everything else can be the personal malefic planet, and it is about power and strength, brave and having courage. The lights are weird. Mercury is a little weird. These planets can be about some very strange things. This is you know, as you see here, healing, prophecy, kind of identity, and also sort of like your own personal dignity. But the sun the sun can be a really dangerous planet to work with. It also burns. The moon is about the inner mind. It's about your feelings and your intuition. The moon is also sort of like a gateway to the higher realms, which we'll talk about very shortly. And the moon, the dangerous part of the moon is also about like sort of like madness or any sort of mental instability you might have. So there's sort of like positive and negatives to the lights. Mercury, in the meantime, you know, never strays far from the sun because its orbit is very close to the sun, and it is about communication and money. You can invoke Mercury for speed. You can invoke Mercury for travel. But you know, everybody's heard all the jokes about Mercury retrograde interfering with communication. It's because what Mercury rules. Mercury rules communication. When Mercury's on your side, you can talk good. But I will say that, like, when you are working with the planets, the first one that you want to start with is the moon. And I'm going to share this incredibly confusing slide with you to argue my point. It's not actually my point. It's from the tricks. The tree, which is the Kabbalistic map of like all of creation, and it sort of is like the metaphysical view of the world. And that very bottom sphere, all the way down at the bottom, is Malkut, or the physical world, the kingdom. This is where we spend most of our time. And in fact, without any work, we never go past the second sphere, where it says the moon is here. That's Yesod. That's where dreams happen. Like if you fall asleep and you have a vivid dream, it's happening in Yesod. You're not going past that. The only way to get through that gateway is to work with some sort of lunar spirit that can get you there, or to figure out some way to jump past it that we're not going to cover because we're talking about planetary magic. But almost always when you are working through a system of planetary magic, you will benefit yourself greatly by starting with the moon and making the moon your ally. When the moon is your ally, you can reach past it into all the other spheres. So just keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the stuff. Start with the moon. The Pick a Trick says you should start with the moon, and it has the best recipe for hummus. So, and then in addition, when you're first starting out, you don't have to make anything super complicated. You can start with planetary petitions. And these are basically just, you write down your wish. You write down what you're working for. You're like, dear the moon, allow me to have prophetic dreams, or allow me to communicate with spirits of Mars. Put it on a piece of white paper, because white is one of the moon's colors. Roll it up and bury it somewhere, or light it on fire, or eat it. It doesn't matter. Basically, planetary petitions are like a very simple way to get started, where you can start with a very simple way of like talking to one of the planetary spirits, and you can work with them over time. You can make them more complicated if you want to. In fact, if you don't want to write it down, you don't have to. I have this line about spontaneous prayer in here because this slide is from an older, much longer series of classes where one of the things I was trying to teach was how to do spontaneous prayer. But things like that can be extremely useful, like just being able to like speak extemporaneously to the planet that you are working with. Petitions are very much helped with offerings, and offerings can be things like food that you would leave that would be associated with the planet. Various incenses are typically used. You can use songs or music associated with planets, or prayers. Repetitions, you can say the petition over and over and over again. And then fasting is something that you find in a lot of planetary magic systems, where you'll like fast for a number of days before you do the ritual itself. Oh boy. Okay, I gotta start talking faster. Okay. All right. So as we get further into this, we're about to start talking about some more specific uses. So let's talk about theurgy and thaumaturgy. These are two broad categories of magical ritual. Theurgy is a magical ritual intended to sort of like elevate your own spirit. Through theurgy, you basically work towards like the Western magical equivalent of enlightenment, right? You're trying to raise your own spirit or your own soul up through all of the planetary spheres so that you can like, behold the divine, or purify your soul, or build your rainbow body for a brilliant, never-ending afterlife where you just float around and who the hell knows what you do then. Thaumaturgy, on the other hand, is literally from the Greek word for wonder working, and this is where you bring the planetary energy down to the material realm in order to create a material effect. For instance, if you want to summon a job, or influence a king, or make your enemy get scurvy, or find $1 million in the street, or all of those worldly effects that magical books are filled with. That's thaumaturgy. Both of these are important when you're working with planetary energies, right? You have to sort of see what they do and how they work. Hopefully your ultimate goal in practicing planetary magic is the theurgic goal of ascending and purifying your spirit and moving into a better place. But who am I to judge? If you want to just use thaumaturgy to pay rent, then I'm super cool with that. Do what makes you happy. So those are the two categories. We're going to talk about some things. A lot of these are thaumaturgic, but we're going to talk about some theurgy stuff too. First, let's start with amulets. Amulets are super common. They show up in so many traditions, folk traditions, real traditions, over and over and over again, all across the world. They're very, very common pieces of human culture. Amulets, this isn't necessarily always true. Don't yell at me for this. Amulets protect while talismans attract. That's not always true. But amulets seem to be sort of like long-lasting, multi-use things that possibly can last for generations. They come in many different forms, some of them personal, some of them impersonal. Some of them you are already very, very familiar with, including probably all of these examples. I'm sure everybody here has seen a lucky rabbit's foot or a St. Christopher medallion. If you haven't seen the Roman winged phallus, then you are in for a treat. You should Google that later tonight, not while you're here. And then evil eye amulets, those little blue and white glass flat things. You've probably seen them around. All of those are amulets. They're designed to protect. Sometimes they are attached to planets. I don't think any of the ones here are really attached to planets that I've listed, but you'll find recipes for these in every grimoire. They are absolutely worth working with. In fact, one of my favorites is from the Grimoire Verum, which starts off with a solar Mars amulet, even though it doesn't label it that way. And you can find a better example of it with the image that goes along with it in the the Joseph Peterson book. Was it The Secrets of Solomon? Anyhow, there's examples of it that with the image that are not in the grimoires. Talismans, on the other hand, tend to be very specific and sometimes are kind of like almost like one-use spells. Sometimes they are ongoing effects, but they tend towards very specific targets, specific people, specific places, sometimes extremely specific spirits, almost always specific spirits, and specific effects. They are also frequently more technical and more involved and require a lot more work and ritual to get done. And we're going to talk about these later, possibly even on the next slide, maybe a little bit on the next slide. Something that will happen as you're working with planetary stuff is you're going to be asked to create sigils. I've taught a lot of classes on this particular topic. It's a long one. I will discuss a few of these methods here. Ike Bakar is otherwise known as the Kabbalah of 9 chambers, and it creates some really cool sort of like square-looking sigils with little circles and stuff. Magic squares, we will talk about. Every planet has a magic square. Received sigils or channeled sigils are things that come out of spirit. When you work with planetary spirits, you might receive a sigil from them. And then also there are tons of different sigil construction methods, including a bunch of them that are found in Agrippa, both in the 3 books and also in the 4th book of occult philosophy. And then, of course, one of Agrippa's methods was either adapted or rediscovered 500 years later by Austin Osman Spare, and you can use that method too. But you almost always will need to have a sigil. If you're using one that's already been created or creating your own, you'll need one of those. Now, magic squares, these are probably the easiest way of creating cool sigils. I think I have some squares, but not examples of sigils. That was dumb. Well, I'll fix that eventually. All right, so a magic square, like every planet has like a number associated with it, and that number is the size of the square. In a magic square, they are basically like these mathematical curiosities. I'll show you guys some examples where every row and every column adds the same number, diagonals and corners add the same number. They can be used as meditative focuses, but you can also use them for sigil creation. So for instance, the number of Saturn is 3, and here's the magic square of Saturn. It takes a moment to do a little bit of Sudoku, and you'll see that every row and every column adds up to the same number. Meanwhile, I'm going to sneeze a little bit. Perfect. Thanks. And then here's the magic square of Jupiter, whose number is 4. And once again, I know this math isn't as fun because the numbers are bigger, but they all add up to the same number. Now, with these squares, what you would do is you would reduce either a spirit name or an intention down so that every letter fit within the bounds. So in this, everything would have to be 16 or less. And then you would trace it out on the magic square. You can find some really good examples of how that works online. I'm sorry that I didn't include one here. That was my oversight. I had intended to do that, and I forgot. You can also work with some existing planetary magic. So, for instance, the Key of Solomon, which I hear called the Greater Key of Solomon, because the other one's called the Lesser Key of Solomon. So why does one of them get a special name? This is possibly possibly the most famous grimoire. I don't know. It's definitely up there. There are lots of very theatrical rituals in it, but the thing that is most interesting about it is that there are these 54 planetary talismans, each with very specific use cases and specific designs on them, and it is probably like probably the prime example of planetary magic as it exists in Western ceremonial magic. It is it can be incredibly complex, decipher, and tough to use correctly unless you are in a tradition that makes really good use of it. What I would suggest, if you really want, we'll look at a few of these, but if you really want to get into the Key of Solomon and the Solomonic Pentacles, find The Sorcery of Solomon by Sarah Mastros, which you might have in the shop. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's in here somewhere. I know that I've seen it here.
It's in the big glass.
Yeah. It's such a good book. Sarah is Sarah, first of all, is like ridiculously brilliant. Has a really deep knowledge of Hebrew and the Hebrew Bible. Does a lot of deciphering of all of the stuff and like recreates some of the pentacles that have just been like super corrupted over time. So, for instance, here are 2 of the 6 Saturn pentacles. I know that they're hard to read because the original pictures are crappy, but also the one on the left is the first Saturn pentacle. You'll notice that it has that both of them have what look like magic squares. They aren't really magic. Well, they're magic squares of a different nature. On the left, this pentacle is used to subjugate spirits. It contains 4 divine names in Hebrew. And that's what it is. On the right, this is the second Saturn square, and if any of you know Hebrew, you will see almost immediately that it contains the most famous magic square in all of history, the Sator square in bad Hebrew. And this is also used to sort of like restrain and control spirits. There are also pentacles that are used for summoning spirits. So down here we have the first Mercury pentacle on the left. This is used to, in the book it says it's used to invoke all the spirits into the firmament, which means that if you successfully create this pentacle, you can use it in any spirit operation possible. And then the one on the right is the first pentacle of the moon, which is not a pentacle because it's a square, and it is used to invoke lunar spirits and also to open any door. Now, Sarah Mastros, when she looked at this, like she turned it to me and she's like, "Oh yes, this is a 3-pin key from like the 6th century or something like that." So it is basically the diagram of a key and a lock. You see it? Cool, huh? I had never thought of it that way before, and in fact, it's funny. The first moon pentacle is the only Solomonic pentacle that I might not be telling the truth, that I remember owning. But it's been a long time. Who the heck knows what I've got? But yeah, like so the Solomonic pentacles can be pretty difficult to put together and pretty difficult to create. But they are used also in a lot of like folk magic traditions, especially in like American root work uses Solomonic pentacles in a lot of stuff. So you'll come across them in different places. Don't shy away from them. If you have the means and the method to explore these, I would advise doing it. They can be very helpful. Okay, now let's talk about the most annoying thing about planetary magic, which is timing. As planetary magic always has to happen at very specific times. Now, this timing is used for instance, the creation of amulets and talismans and pentacles. It's used for like assembling them. So like you might actually have to like plan it out and be like, I'm going to create my own artwork for this. I'm going to blah, 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 blah this. So you have to find like the right timing for that. And then you're going to be like, oh, and then I have to cast this in metal, or make it out of clay, or carve it from a bone, and you have to find the right timing for that. And then you also have to have the right timing for like purification and consecration rituals. All of these layers kind of build on each other. So the timing can get super, super complex, and depending on how nerdy a planetary magician you want to be, you can get obsessive about it. And it is one of the most ridiculous traps of planetary magic, is the trap of waiting for the exact right time. So I will give you this piece of advice. Don't wait. You can finagle the time as much as you want to try to get the perfect planetary day, the perfect hour, the perfect election. But like, honestly, give yourself some limits and be like, I'm finding the best possible time within this time limit. Because otherwise, you'll never get anything done. There's always going to be a better time around the corner, and it'll just stop you. So these three categories that I've got here are basically three different levels of complexity. And as we go down them, you're going to be like, that's not simple. How complex is the next one? So we're going to start with planetary days and hours. Okay, so here's how you calculate what planetary day and what planetary hour it is. First, you calculate sunrise and sundown using the sunrise equation. Once you have that, you have the total number of minutes in the day and minutes in the night. You divide that by 12, and you find out how long each planetary hour is in the day, or how long it is in the night. Then you just sort of count. Planetary hours progress in the Chaldean order, which means that the first dawn hour of the day corresponds to the planet of the day, right? So when the sun is rising on Monday, it's the hour of the moon and the day of the moon. When the sun is rising on Tuesday, it's the hour of Mars and the day of Mars, and so on and so forth. And it keeps going. And it actually, because of the mysteries of mathematics, it works out perfectly. Like, there's no skip. You go through your 24 hours, and you start on the moon on Monday. When the sun rises on Tuesday, it's Mars hour, Mars day, because it's supposed to be. And it's amazing that the math works. You can do all the calculation you want, and you will hate yourself for doing it. The best thing to do is use an app, or if you don't have an app, you can call Alexa, because she has the app installed on her phone, and that works just fine. But planetary days and hours are almost always like very, very important in planetary magic. And in fact, one of the things that frustrates me so much and that I ignore so often is that in electional astrology, a lot of times you're told that your election has to match a planetary day and hour. And I'm always just like, why? Planetary days and hours were obviously a shorthand for people who couldn't do astrology because computers hadn't been invented. Astrologers, man. Damn. Okay. Anyhow, astrology is super hard. And before computers and before telescopes, it was even harder. And I think the Boxgrove manual was actually written in the 17th century. So I should probably fire my secretary or whoever wrote this slide. So there were a lot of shortcuts to do elections without like doing the whole astrology thing. The Boxgrove manual, which is about creating talismans and invoking the planetary intelligences, has these like super, super simple rules. First, make sure the moon is waxing and not waning. Make sure the moon is increasing in size. Second, use the day and the hour of the planet. Like, that's very important. And then third, make the target planet in its own domicile or exaltation, which are astrological terms, Mars is in its domicile in Scorpio, and the moon is in its domicile in Cancer, that sort of thing. These are very simple elections. It doesn't take into account any aspects, any malefics, anything of that nature. You just sort of follow this, and you're like, all right, cool, I'm going with it. You might have really good results. There are a lot of questions about electional astrology, like, does your own birth chart influence it? How complicated does that have to be? How many of the rules you have to follow? I have not met an astrological magician who can tell me for sure that all of the rules are that necessary, and it seems like different people have different results. So try the simple elections, see how they work. Or you can go full-blown space nerd. Electional astrology is its own branch of astrology. There are too many rules to list tonight. We will run out of time. I will stop being able to speak. You can read the Pickatrix, for instance, and get a really nice set of rules and find like your own flow chart and checklist and all that kind of stuff. You can take classes from professional electional astrologers who will teach you all the rules. You can subscribe to the Patreon of like Ryan Butler, who's an electional astrologer who sends out a thing every month where he's like, here's a list of elections I found this month. Go do your, Mars talisman and your Venus talisman at these times. Those are all really good ways to do it. When you're first starting out, I don't think you need to dive all the way into electional astrology because it will sort of restrict how much practice you actually get to do. But eventually you're going to want to get there, and you'll love it and hate it. Okay. So when I really love this slide. I can't remember. I feel like this is a little bit of a duplicate. And the letters are so tiny. You guys are all going to love this. Designing a planetary talisman. That's what we're going to talk about. What goes into a planetary talisman? Like if you on Instagram and you follow astrologers and astrological artists and people who are creating and selling talismans, you will see such a wide variety of things. People making so many pieces of jewelry and artwork and clothing and all kinds of stuff. What are the things that you're going to want to think about or do when you're working with this stuff? So planetary talismans, they can be with you for a long time. And sometimes you can make a really simple talisman on a piece of paper that's just about like, pay my rent next month, or get me some free cheese or something of that nature. But other times you might want to make a planetary talisman whose purpose is to increase your own virtue or enable you to practice better art or better mathematics, or even help you understand some of the mysteries of human existence to increase your efforts in theurgy. So this chart I made a while ago is sort of like to help me sort of like figure out where I'm looking when I'm designing a planetary talisman. So I have here the thaumaturgical uses of these things. I went over those a little bit earlier. The arts are, I don't remember where I got the list. Maybe from Freemasonry. Who knows? But the arts and the virtues are sort of things that are intended to help you kind of like improve yourself and improve your own operation in the material world. And then theurgy is to improve your sort of inner health and your inner spiritual health. The next thing you're going to want to do, especially as you're working along through this stuff, is you need to get familiar with working with planetary spirits. You're going to need to figure out how spirit contact works. If you can't do it yourself, you're going to need to find a partner or a friend or a magic buddy who can do it. And this is going to involve various different methods. Like maybe it's going to be drawing spirits into crystals, which is DSIC. Maybe it's going to be dream work. Maybe it's going to be just calculations and finding spirits through math. It's going to require research. You're going to be looking through books and looking through things and finding interesting spirits in other sources, some of which might come from outside of your traditional religion or whatever your path is. And then sometimes it's going to involve, oh, here's the calculation. We've come upon it again. Calculating the names of planetary spirits, which has 2 asterisks by it and nothing down at the bottom to tell you what that means. You can calculate the names of planetary spirits using electional astrology. I have a tool on my website that does it for you, but it's complicated. We won't talk about it right now. The next thing you need to worry about is creating images for talismans. This, when you start out, you should just use some pre-existing images. Every single grimoire that deals with astrological magic has so many images in it. You already know them. Like when you hear of Zeus, what do you think of? Giant bearded dude in a toga with a lightning bolt, right? That's an image. That's a planetary image. You can use that. What about Mars? Aries. What does Mars look like?
red, a warrior.
There you go. There you go, dude. Yeah. So every single one of these planets already has an image that lives rent-free in your soul. You can use those, or you can find other ones. There are tons of images out there. Yeah, mythology and astrology are good ways to find them. Use tarot cards or oracle cards. You will. Well, what I found as I started doing planetary magic is my dreams started to get more vivid, and there would be times when I was like working on a particular project, and I would dream about it, and the dream would give me the image. So you can use that. Scrying, looking into crystal balls or pools of water. And then also, we do live in the modern world, and not all of your images have to be old ones. So borrow from pop culture. Like, why can't your image of Mars be Tank Girl, for instance, or Terminator, or something of that nature? Why can't your image of Jupiter be, I don't know, I'm blanking on this. Your favorite boss? Pillsbury Doughboy. Yeah, why not? Yeah, or Saturn could be like Doc Brown from Back to the Future, right? He's an old guy who's kind of crotchety, and he deals with time. So you can use pop culture. You can use, you can find images. The thing that you need to remember about planetary magic and this whole planetary thing is it's so embedded in our culture that these images are everywhere, and they pop up over and over again. Possibly like archetypes. I don't want to say that too loudly, just in case Nick is like standing right outside the door waiting for me to say something Jungian, so he can pop in and tell me I'm wrong. But when you have it, create a physical drawing. And I will tell you that this drawing does not need to be good. In fact, it doesn't even need to be like half good. If you look at historical planetary images, they're like the shittiest stick figures ever. Like if your first grade kid brought these pictures home from school, you wouldn't hang them on the fridge. You'd be like, whatever, and you'd throw it away. So you don't need to have good pictures. There just needs to be something that tells you what the image is, because the real image exists within you. It's not a physical thing. Okay, so once you've got spirits and an intent and a planet, and you've got an image, the next thing you need to do is design the talisman itself. Now, you can get really boring and just make like a round thing, but the physical material usually matters. Colors, spirit names, all this sorts of stuff. Physical materials are usually tied to individual planets, and though we do have some pretty strong ideas of these now, they weren't always the same in the past. And also, we've discovered new physical materials here in the modern day, so don't stress about it too much. But for instance, like lead is associated with Saturn, gold with sun, silver with the moon, that sort of thing. But also in the past, sometimes gold has been associated with Venus. Iron is sometimes associated with Mars, but sometimes copper is with Mars, but now copper is with Venus. So a lot of times the physical materials, there's a lot of leeway. And also some of them are super expensive. And I will tell you, one thing that I have found is I get colored construction paper a lot of times, and it works great. Or use paint. Color is very, very important for invoking this sort of stuff. I also like to use that moldable clay that you like bake in the oven to make hard. I can't remember what it's called. Sculpey. Sculpey, I think, is great. Andrew Watt once told me that I shouldn't use Sculpey because plastic can't contain spirits. And I'm like, why not? It's way more organic than like gold. So I use plastic frequently. 3D printers are amazing too. If you've got 3D printers, you can make talismans. It also paper mache, clay, whatever. Spirit names. A lot of times, for me especially, I like to inscribe the names of the spirits that I'm working with, the planetary spirits, on the talisman. I find that to be very powerful, along with sigils and along with the depiction of the image. However, I do not show off my talismans to others, so none of you get to see how crappy my artwork is. But, you know, perhaps someday, if you buy me a beer, I will draw you a picture of a horse, and then you can laugh at me. I'll get a free beer. And then planetary symbols. So there's lots of like traditional planetary symbols, which you have definitely seen before. So here are a couple examples of talisman designs. The one on the left is, I believe, from the Boxgrove manual that I mentioned before. You can see that it has Anael and Hagiel, which are spirits of Venus that were used in Agrippa. That's the Venus square. And so it's a Venus talisman that just basically uses all these symbols from Agrippa's 3 books of cult philosophy and plops them into a circle. And that Joseph Smith, the dude, invented Mormonism. Never had the talisman. I think see that little swoopy thing down there in the bottom where that has the break in it? That is from a specific printing error in the Magus. I know all of this because of Nick. But yeah, so planetary talismans, they were real and they have been carried by real people, and this was one of them. Okay, so let's talk about, and basically these are the most boring talisman designs. Like, you just get on Instagram and find astrologers making artwork, and they are creating like the coolest friggin' stuff. There's I haven't been on Instagram in a very long time, but like Tony Mack used to make these really amazing, intricate pieces of planetary jewelry that, of course, cost thousands and thousands of dollars. I've seen people who do things where they like create like planetary rings where they seal like the herbs of the planet inside, and then they like stick the rest of the metal on top and stuff. All sorts of cool things. I mean, a lot of times when I want to involve herbs and stones and things, I make like a felt bag that's the color of the planet, and I just sew it shut. I might have a bunch of those on me right now. Who even knows? So you don't have to get all intricate and creative and weird. You can make things extremely simple. The important thing is just that you're making stuff. So a talisman creation framework, like we went through this before, but there's more to it than just the ritual, and you might want to worry about timing things for every single one of these steps. So first, the preparation, and that's the one where you're like sitting down and saying like, okay, I'm creating a talisman. What am I doing it for? Why do I need a talisman? What am I, so you go through all your books and you go through all your notes and you like sort of collect all the ideas that you have and you start sort of working on it. This is the preparatory stage of a project. Second is sort of like the construction. I should have said design and construction of the thing, where you come up with the image and you come up with what materials you're making it out of, and you start to actually build the thing. This can also include, like for me, since I feel like mostly what I do is writing, I spend this time writing a specific ritual for the talisman. And depending on how strict you are with this, you might want to time this. You might want to only work on it in the planetary hour, for instance. But that can be very restrictive, so maybe you won't. That's the second stage. The third stage is the ritual itself. And these can be very, very complex, or sometimes very, very simple. And there's kind of it was like create the most part. The framework that I talked about. But an important part is of art or and then you find it. So you do all that, and then you do your this is my slide. So I'd like to talk about because exciting. And fun and like creative project. And this act almost, or a spiritual. And so that means like you need to have a which involves, you know, first of all, meditation, learning how to like calm your mind and observe your mind. So you know how your mind works and where your mind is in relation to other things. Second is the connection with nature. There's no way you can ever do planetary magic if you don't have some connection with nature. And that means you have to go outside and look up. You have to see the sky. Learn some stars. Use a star app on your phone. Learn to see where some planets are. Get some binoculars. Visit a planetarium. Go to a observatory. Like, find some way to see the sky and experience like the beauty and wonder of this vast, weird cosmos that we live in. Without this, the planetary magic that you do, it's just navel gazing. It's not connecting with the world around you. Planetary magic is about connecting with the greater part of nature. Spirit contact, I think, is very important. I know that that's kind of a difficult one for a lot of people, but figure out how to at least try working on it. In my opinion, these last two are my opinions. I believe that theurgy, the idea of like ascending through the spheres, raising your own soul to a higher level, should be the ultimate practice, the ultimate goal of a planetary magic practice. With thaumaturgy being in there necessarily, but only sometimes. So that is sort of how I'm going to close this off as I come to this last slide and I say, thank you. And then I'm going to have some water and then I'll answer questions. Are there any online questions? Thank you. Thank you.
It's not so much a question. I just kind of want to repeat what I think I heard you say about a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
Just feedback on that. And I'm going back to where it says, my notes are, it's like, don't wait, but don't get too granular. It's easy. Yeah, it's easy to get super granular.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could probably drive you nuts.
Yeah. So that's about timing, right? Like,
yeah.
When you start to get into electional astrology, there'll be rules where it's like, make sure, the sun is in Aries in the first house and Mars is in blah, 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 blah in this house. Or do this other thing where this is here and this is here, but then also make sure that the moon is doing this and make sure that, you don't have any aspects from the left planets. Like the rules can just get so overwhelming that it becomes impossible or extremely improbable that you will find a perfect election. And so with the timing thing, a lot of times what I've been advised to do and what I do when I'm doing that sort of thing is I find a specific window. Like I'm like, okay, I'm going to create a talisman and it has to happen sometime during the month of June. So I just have to find the best election during that month and not look outside of it. So that's the only trick that I've discovered that can keep you from just not doing it. Sometimes, honestly, you just don't do it. Very specific talismans. Like, for instance, the ointment of the sun, which is a recipe in the Picatrix. There are usually like 2 times a year, which are really good for it, but not every year. And so I found a great election in 2019, and I still have some of that ointment of the sun. I'm sure it's rancid oil by now, but I kept it in a cool, dark place. So sometimes depending on like the spell or the recipe you're following, there might be a really, really specific election. But other times you need to do a talisman, and you just have to set limits on your time. that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, it's just like, it could be so easy to like
Oh,
go
yeah.
down the rabbit hole hard.
Oh,
Get like super granular, and it's just like,
And if you're here learning about magic, that's probably part of your personality. Yes.
I have a couple. About the spirit list you brought up.
Uh-huh.
The planetary associations of the four archangels.
Uh-huh.
Do those have anything to do with like the hermetic associations with the cardinal directions, such as?
You're talking about the lesser vanishing ritual, the pentagram?
Yeah.
I'm sure they do in some sense, but the lesser vanishing ritual, the pentagram, is really new, right? That was invented by the Golden Dawn in the 1800s, and that list of archangels is like 1,000 years older than that. So the Golden Dawn, they probably did, but also the lesser vanishing ritual, the pentagram, is a terrestrial ritual, and that was a celestial association. So yeah, I'm sure there's a connection. I can't tell you what it is off the top of my head.
Thank you. And then the other question, one of the list of the quote unquote evil spirits.
Uh-huh.
The last one kind of looked like Asmodee.
Cosmodie. Yeah. I don't think they do.
Or whoever.
Well, so that was Agrippa's list. Honestly, do you have Pandemonium? Oh,
I do.
Let's see what Jake Stratton Kent says. Because he would.
That list is older than the best review.
That's a good question. Probably, maybe. Who knows? It's dark in here. Let me see if I can do this. Gar. I don't think that they're related, but it's possible. Asmodee, main entry, 180. You all should buy this book, by the way. It's really, really good. Asmodee. Asmodeus. He shows up in the Hygromantea, which is older than Agrippa. I don't know. Doesn't say anything about them being related here.
Yeah. Still a thing, more made more detail on that.
Which one?
Stella stem.
I actually don't know that one.
It's there's one right on the back.
Okay. Now I don't see. Oh, they're anywhere else. Doesn't talk about really what they're used for. Been a list of things I wanted that I've been trying to research for a long time, but I haven't been able. So, yeah, I think I have. I'm sure I can forget how to do that. Any other questions? Are there online questions?
There do not seem to be.
All right. Any questions from any more questions from y'all? Yes.
Another one. In terms of the Picatrix,
Uh-huh.
and this isn't necessarily specific to planetary magic. I'm looking for a copy of it that also has some historical context. Context.
You
part of it.
need to get the Deanna Trell.
Dan Trump.
Yeah, Attrell, and Porreca, Porreca. Is that how you spell it? Is it? I think it's Chicago University Press.
Definitely.
Yeah, the Dan Trell one. It's not Chicago, is it? It's but yeah, Dan. Yeah, it's one of those university presses that won't sell to independent bookstores. So.
Oh.
They're terrible.
Yeah.
They want to charge you university book prices.
Yeah.
Oh.
You can find it for, but basically, like it's like $40 or $50 online, but that's what they would charge Steve. But it's an excellent translation, and it has all the historical context that.
From Spain.
Yeah, I mean, that particular Latin translation is Spanish,
Mhm.
but also he talks about older
Okay.
stuff. We do have lots of Arabic manuscripts available, and at some point there's going to be a translation straight from Arabic coming out any day now for the past 5 years. But yeah, so it's a good book though. I'd recommend it. Yeah, all right. I guess that's it. I should. Thank you, everybody. Where did I put my book? You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.